So I just got done talking about all that stuff about existentialism and why I think even living in a small community, even your own life, the all the things that surround you locally can ultimately still be perfectly fulfilling, and that's okay, and etc. I just got done talking about all that. So now I feel better going forward talking about like the specifics of like the things I appreciate and the things I think about. um, it's like I feel as though I've better laid the groundwork, if that makes sense. Even still, I do feel the need to like waffle on a little bit and lay some groundwork before I get into talking about the thing I want to talk about. So, the one thing I'll say is I'm going to make the extremely obvious statement that I recognize that there are bad people out there, there are people that do harm. I can recognize them when they come along, and I can recognize that they need to go. So, when I talk about what I'm about to talk about, I'm not talking about those people, which hopefully will make sense in a second. What I want to say is that, like, oftentimes people will say, like, people will talk about how we're all individuals, we're all unique people with our own lived experiences, our own differing experiences. So, no two people are exactly the same. Um, However, like, if you zoom out far enough, ultimately we do all exist in the same context, right? We all exist as people in society. And I think it's a slight misnomer to say that we're all completely different, that we're all simply individuals. I think it's more accurate to say that everyone out there fits into their own set of categories. Um, and I doubt there are any two people that fit into precisely all the same categories in all the same ways. But nonetheless, I've always found that to be a better way to say it. Because, like, so just to zoom in on America, for example, because that's the country where I've lived in my whole life. Like, if you take anyone who's gone to any American public school, um, despite the fact that there are some 330 million Americans and um, however many thousand public schools, like how many public high schools in the US? Let's look that up real quick. 23,882. So, how many high school students are in the US? Approximately 17.3 million, so says Google. But despite that, if you take those 17.3 million people, if you take anyone from any of those 23,000 high schools, and you ask them to tell you about people from their school, people they know, they'll all tell you about the same general types of people. Like has, every high school has that one kid who this or that. Um, and I don't know, I think that's a really important thing to have. And if there were a certain category of person that, that somehow went missing, that I woke up one day not to find in my school, no matter which one they were, even if, like, okay, I think I will phrase this much better if I give a specific example. Um, like, every one of those 23,000 high schools in the US has that kid who's just a little too loud and who is not that funny. We all have that. We've all had to deal with that. Every one of those 17.3 million high school students in America. Um, Either they are that kid, or they have had to suffer through a class with that kid. Um, and as much as and I'm sure everyone watching hates that type of person, if I were to wake up tomorrow and everybody whom I can think of who matches that description were suddenly gone, despite how much I hate them, I would miss them. Because I guess no matter who a person is and no matter what different categories that person fits into, they're still an important person. And well, they're still important to me. And even if it's somebody whom I'm unequivocally incredibly annoyed by and feel nothing but resentment towards, I would still miss them if they were gone. Something fundamental would change about those 23,000 high schools if none of them had that one kid who was just way too loud and who was always trying to be funny but wasn't that funny. And somehow I think it would be something negative. I think it would be a negative change if that type of person were to somehow cease to exist. And what I just said with that example, you can apply to any example you can think of whatever category, whatever type of person. And my saying that is the reason that I preceded this by saying, hey, I can recognize when somebody's like a bad or harmful person, and I can recognize that that person needs to go. That's not what I'm talking about. That's not who I'm talking about. I'm talking about innocuous, harmless. I just burped. Innocuous, harmless things. It is very important to me to specify that. Otherwise, my entire thesis statement here is just completely destroyed. But like, I don't know, if I thought for long enough, I could go on about however many different examples there are, however many different categories of people there are. But my point here, I suppose, is that if you can extrapolate from what I'm saying, that really we're not fully individuals, we're not fully unique. If you took two of those kids, who are just way too loud, not that funny, if you took two of those kids in two completely different high schools and you just swapped them, then, well, it'll be a pretty big adjustment period for both of them, but eventually things would settle out to be the same. But if you took those kids and you got rid of them, then there's no real coming back from that, not fully. It is terribly late at night. I definitely should be getting to sleep, and I don't know, maybe none of this maybe none of this makes sense, maybe. But it's something I think about often. It's something I find myself struggling a great deal with. I know the emotions I feel, like I know how I feel about this, but it's incredibly difficult to put into words. I don't think I'll ever be able to properly 100% communicate the exact emotion I'm feeling through just my own words. I don't think I have that power. But I think it's still worth it to try my best. So I guess that's it. Bye.